want all of you to answer truthfully. Have you ever misrepresented something on a loan application?
I never have. I'm sorry.
Well, right, ML. We know you're the righteous one.
Did you waste the taxpayers' time by putting him through an election when you intended to plead guilty?
Thank you.
I mean, why did you go for this election when you're going to plead guilty?
State lawmaker Brian Banks dodging questions as his lawyer goes on the attack. Banks in court today for sentencing after admitting to defrauding a credit union.
The former Detroit lawmaker won't do any time, leaving him free to ask for more of your money. But as problem solver ML Elric found out, he's not willing to say what he plans to do with it.
Bill and Monica, Brian Banks resigned from the Michigan House 2 weeks ago to avoid a trial on felony fraud charges. Losing that trial could have put him behind bars for many, many years. But securing his freedom hasn't inspired Mr. Banks to exercise his freedom of speech. Brian Banks hurried into court. Hung around outside while his attorney took some shots at the Attorney General.
So this whole prosecution was ridiculous and a waste of the taxpayers' money.
Then he hurried away. Are you running for office or just running?
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Talk to Dan.
That's a big jump. Just answer questions.
Have a good day.
But on the day he was sentenced to a day in jail, which really is no time because he got 1 day credit for time served, the disgraced former lawmaker wasn't very talkative.
All right, Mr. Banks, anything you'd like to say?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Banks, fairly well. I assume we won't be seeing you back here again.
The question is whether we'll be seeing Mr. Banks running for office again.
If he has the right to run again, I mean, he may run again. If he doesn't, he won't. I mean, Mr. Banks is going to follow whatever the law is.
Of course, Mr. Banks has a history of not following whatever the law is. Even before he was first elected to office in 2012, the Right Honorable Mr. Banks had 8 felony convictions for financial misdeeds on his record.
I want all of you to answer truthfully. Have you ever misrepresented something on a loan application?
I never have. I'm sorry.
Well, right, ML. We know you're the righteous one.
No, I don't know about that. But since we're speaking of money, Mr. Banks announced the day after he resigned that he would still hold a political fundraiser next month. The invitation calls Banks a true fighter for the people. It just didn't say what he wants the money for. You gonna run again?
No comment.
What's the fundraiser for?
No comment. I have an attorney.
What are you raising money for?
I have an attorney. Have a good day.
Well, why don't you just answer some questions? You know what? We'd just like to know, why don't you tell the people of the 1st District what you're going to do?
The journalist, he's from Fox.
Like Mr. Banks, I am guilty as charged. I am a reporter for Fox 2 Detroit, and that means my job is to get answers. Answers for you. Did you waste the taxpayers' time by putting him through an election when you intended to plead guilty?
Thank you.
I mean, why did you go for this election when you're going to plead guilty?
Talk to Dan.
Are you running for office or just running?
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Talk to Dan.
That's a big jump. Just
Have a
answer
good day.
questions.
Have a good day.
You know, you say that you're so brave.
Have a good day.
You say that you're a fearless fighter. Can't you answer a question? A primary election to replace Banks will be held on August 8th, with the Democratic and Republican nominees squaring off on November 7th. State officials say they chose those dates to avoid holding special elections. Now, that will save taxpayers money, but it also means thousands of East Siders won't have a voice in Lansing until next year.
And the attorney for Banks says he thinks this is all politically motivated.
Right, and there may be something to that. This case that inspired the charges was from 2010, before Banks was elected to the State House, and the charges were brought on the last day of the statute of limitations. Pretty unusual, but at the same time, as a judge in the case has said, it doesn't matter why the charges were brought. The only question that matters is, did he do it? And Mr. Banks admitted, I did it.
But you have to admit, ML, Brian Banks is very popular in his district, and you have to wonder who's giving him money.
He is popular. Unlike some Detroit lawmakers, he spends a lot of time talking to constituents. He's very accessible. He returns calls from community leaders. People in that district like him. Some people. But who would give him money? Well, he has been the leading blocker of de-insurance, the mayor's plan to get affordable insurance for Detroiters. So hospitals, trial attorneys, people who don't want to see caps on judgments, on hospital bills, they like Brian Banks. They want Brian Banks to keep going. Now, Brian Banks says we should be doing stories on the people who are for the insurance, paying all the money they've got. The way I look at it is, you're all getting a lot of money. Why don't you just tell us who's paying you? And what are you going to use it for? That's the question. What are you going to use that money for? He won't say.
So he could actually still run for the seat he just resigned from.
Well, his attorney says if he can, he will. If he can't, he won't. No one seems to know. The Attorney General and the Secretary of State say that he can't. But it says you can serve 3 full terms. He's only served 2 terms and a part of a term. But I think the smart money is on him running for the Senate next year because Burt Johnson, who serves in his district, is term limited. And that gives Brian Banks another 8 years in landscaping and can win that seat. So he may just be getting an early start, but the question is, here's a guy who never seems to have any money. What's he going to do for the next 2 years?
The saga continues.
We will try and follow it as best we can.
Thanks, ML.